The following videos will about functions or formulas. What you can see here are the formulas. You can see a formula sum, date, today, and so on. And I'm right now not in this home ribbon, but in the formulas ribbon, and I use this term function. You see it's called insert function here as well, because a function is always what it has a name of, like sum or date. It's not something like equal sign a1 times b2. What you can see here is that here the functions are really shown. If you click on the formulas bar and then click on show formulas, you can toggle between formulas and the value the formulas have computed. I'm going back to formulas, and now you can see the different formulas. How does a formula look like? It always starts with an equal sign. Then there is this function name. In the first case, this is sum, then date. And then after the function name, there are always parentheses. And within the parentheses, you can enter input parameters or arguments or input values. If you go back from the show formulas and I click on the cell, you can see in this input bar the same formula. So what you can see here is the sum function, equal sign, the name sum, parentheses is opened, and then we have 4 arguments, and important, these arguments are separated by a semicolon. So that is Excel syntax. You cannot use a colon or something like that or an empty space. It has to be a semicolon. Then Excel knows it's the second, it's the third argument which now follows. And finally, you have to close the parentheses, you have to close the brackets. Each function has input parameters, input arguments, and has one output. And you can see here the function date takes input parameters 2024, which of course is the year, the 10 for the month, and the 1 for the current date, and it computes and it generates then the value which is the date, and it's given in a certain format like you can see in here. There's other functions, and I have used these today functions simply to show that there are functions even without any argument, but then still you have to use a parenthesis. So a function always has brackets or parentheses. 2 more functions, simply to show a little bit the variety, what is offered. Here we have a logic function, and the input parameters are logic values, true and false. Both have to be written in capital letters. And you can see here the result. If something is true and false, so if you have 2 different values, all have to be true. Only then the complete output is true, otherwise it's false. And one more. We have this function write, which is a text function. It manipulates text. A text is always given within quotation marks. You see here, this is a text. I'll make it small. And the second parameter, the 7, says how many of the characters taken from the right are given as an output. What you can see is it's an empty space, a empty space, text. So by this you can manipulate and focus on certain part of the text. Let's have another look on arguments. So far we have just used constants as arguments. In here I have the same function sum again and again, but have different kind of arguments. First, as before, I simply have 3 arguments which are all constants. A 3, a 5, a 7, and you can compute by yourself. Oops. The result is 15. In the second formula, I have different arguments. I have now mathematical terms which are first computed and then handed over as a real argument to the function. So first, it's a product of 23 and multiplied by 12. Then it's a sum 4 plus 5, and it's a division 8 divided by 2. So actually, these terms are first executed, and the result is then the argument within this function. Yeah? Okay, next. I have not a single cell, but ranges of cell, or 2 ranges of cell as an argument for this function. I have to make sure that the right data type is used, that in these cells there are only numbers. So what you can see here is the first part, which is a blue one. It's a cell range E1 to E6. And the red one is E4 to F10. So you can see ranges can be one-dimensional, but they can be two-dimensional. It means they cover both several rows and several columns as well. And you can calculate, and you see, okay, the sum should be then 168. And finally, you can have combination of all of those. So the first argument here is a constant, the second is a term, and the last one is a range. The only important thing is that the output of all these different kind of combinations is always a number. We can make things even a little bit more complex. Have a look on these numbers in here, and now I can show you some formulas. So what you can see here is we have some columns, and I always calculate the maximum number in these columns. So let's check it. The 20 is in here. If I make it a little smaller, let's say take the 15, then suddenly the 17 in here is the highest number, and the 17 here is shown as well. So here I do have the maximum, and in here I sum up all these maximum in these cells. And then, this is what I wanted to show. I have in here something which combines everything. I have the sum formula, and the arguments are formulas as well. So it is max E1 to E12, max F1 to F12, and so on. So I have functions as arguments within other functions. We're talking about inner and outer function, and when it comes to the inner function, the maximum, then their return value must be of the same data type as it is expected from the outer function. In this case, maximum has an argument, has a return value, a number, and sum expects a number, so everything is fine. Yeah, and it works. So if I again enter the 20 in here, you see the 20 has changed this value, the sum has changed, the sum has changed here as well. Let's do a quick repetition. Functions always start with an equal sign, then there is this function name. You have some brackets or parentheses, and within this parentheses there will follow some input arguments. Of course, it depends on the function which kind of input arguments are required, and there are data types like numbers or text or logic values like true and false, and the input arguments have always to fit. So if a number is expected, you can't enter a text.